They didn't just misuse her trust. They tried to erase her entire life's work, decades of groundbreaking scientific research, gone, wiped clean, as if it never existed, or so they thought, so they hoped. Imagine dedicating your whole existence, your every waking thought, to understanding the universe, to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, further and further, into the unknown. Imagine pouring your soul into that work, sacrificing relationships, comfort, a conventional life, all for the pursuit of truth. Only to have your own family, someone you nurtured, someone you saw as your intellectual heir, try to steal it all, every equation, every theory, every late night spent staring at the stars. And worse, so much worse, try to obliterate the proof you ever existed, professionally speaking, wiping your name from your own discoveries, rewriting history, their history, built on your ruins. It's monstrous, it's almost unbelievable, it chills you to the bone, doesn't it? I'm Victoria, and you're listening to a story that needs to be heard. It absolutely demands your attention. This is a story about betrayal that cuts deeper than blood, deeper than money. It cuts right to the soul, to the very essence of who someone is, their identity, their purpose. Today, I want to share the story of a woman I'll call Evelyn, Dr. Evelyn Morau, a name synonymous with brilliance in her field, astrophysics, a true pioneer. She didn't just map stars, she deciphered their whispers, unraveled cosmic mysteries that others couldn't even conceive of. But the darkness she ultimately faced wasn't lurking in the vast, cold void of space. It wasn't hidden in nebulae or black holes. It was right here on Earth, much closer, in her own home, radiating from someone she loved, someone she trusted implicitly. Evelyn isn't just brilliant, she's precise, meticulously logical, almost detached sometimes. You might think if you only saw the surface, but underneath that formidable academic exterior, there's this core of, well, pure steel, forged in the intense fires of intellectual rigor, tempered by decades of discipline, and fueled by a deep, unwavering, almost sacred passion for truth, the objective truth. This story is intense, it's raw, it involves the calculated theft of a legacy, gaslighting on an epic, horrifying scale, and a fight for survival, professional and personal survival, that required not just courage, but a kind of ruthless, strategic calculation, the kind she usually reserved for plotting stellar trajectories. You need to hear how Evelyn turned the tables, how she fought back using the very tools they tried to steal from her, her mind, her razor-sharp logic, her unwavering focus, her refusal to be erased. Stick with me, subscribe right now if you haven't already. You absolutely don't want to miss the conclusion to this. It's unforgettable, a masterclass in reclaiming what's yours. Evelyn shared this with me over many months, many conversations. It wasn't easy for her. Reliving it was painful, traumatic, but she wanted it told, not for fame, not for pity, but as a warning, a stark warning about misplaced trust, and maybe, just maybe, as a testament to the enduring power of resilience, even when you think everything is lost, utterly and completely lost. So now I'm going to let Evelyn tell you, in her own words, what happened. The transition might feel abrupt, but the story demands it. Listen close, this is Evelyn. My world was ordered, predictable, mostly. The universe, you see, operates on laws, principles, elegant immutable equations, things you can deduce, understand if you look closely enough, if you have the patience, the dedication. For 50 years, that was my life, my sanctuary, my observatory, late nights under the dome, the quiet hum of telescopes, my calculations filling notebooks, whiteboards covered in chalk dust. My theoretical models running on supercomputers, always trying to glimpse the underlying structure of everything, dark matter distribution, galactic formation dynamics, the faint echo of the Big Bang. It wasn't just a job, it was my oxygen, my reason for being. I never married, never had children of my own. Science, especially theoretical physics, is a demanding partner, a jealous mistress some might say. It requires a singular focus, a level of immersion that leaves little room for conventional domesticity. It was a conscious choice, a sacrifice I made willingly, for the pursuit, for the discoveries. But I wasn't entirely alone. I had colleagues, esteemed peers around the world, friendships forged in shared intellectual battles, and I had Julian, my nephew, my late sister's only child. He lost his mother young. I stepped in, perhaps trying to fill a void, perhaps seeing a spark I recognized. He was bright, or seemed bright. Eager, he showed an early interest in my work, asking surprisingly insightful questions for a boy, visiting the observatory, wide-eyed, full of wonder. I saw potential, a genuine spark of scientific curiosity, or maybe I projected my own youthful passion onto him, hoping to see it reflected back, a chance to pass on the torch. I encouraged him, mentored him through school, answered his endless questions, explained complex concepts, helped fund his university education in physics, gave him access to my labs during summer breaks, my extensive library, even let him read some of my preliminary findings, drafts I shared with almost no one else, trustingly, naively, foolishly. He seemed grateful, attentive, always respectful, especially as I got older. As the years advanced, he'd visit more often, help with errands, fixing leaky taps, programming my ridiculous smart TV, small things, building goodwill, building trust. We'd talk for hours about his own astrophysics studies, his progress, his challenges. He'd ask questions, seemingly innocent questions about my ongoing research, my latest theoretical hurdles, my digital archiving methods, my backup procedures. Just curious, Aunt Evelyn, he'd say, trying to learn best practices. Looking back, the signs were there, faint, like distant gravitational lensing, distorting the light just slightly, tiny inconsistencies, moments of insincerity I brushed aside, small manipulations I chose not to see, because I didn't want to see them, because he was family, my sister's boy. Then he brought Sylvia into our lives, his girlfriend, later his fiancée. She was sharp, ambitious, polished, and overwhelmingly flattering. She claimed utter fascination with my career, my achievements, asked to see my early papers, my awards displayed on the mantelpiece. She'd hang on my every word during dinner conversations, praising my intellect, my dedication, asking thoughtful follow-up questions. It felt validating at first. Another layer of distortion, clouding my judgment, making me feel appreciated, understood, less alone perhaps. Then came the fall, not metaphorical, a brutally literal fall, a patch of black ice on the steps outside the university library. One moment I was walking thinking about redshift anomalies, the next, searing pain, the cold hard pavement, a broken hip, a bad break. Complicated, requiring extensive surgery, pins, rods. It meant a long, frustrating, debilitating recovery. I was confined, dependent, utterly vulnerable, stuck first in that sterile hospital bed, listening to the beeping machines, then trapped in my own home, a place that suddenly felt like a prison, relying on others for everything, basic needs, movement, contact with the outside world. Julian stepped up, or seemed to. He was there constantly, managing my affairs, paying bills online, liaising with the university administration about my extended medical leave, my research funding, assuring me my precious research archive was secure, safe, that he was personally making sure everything was meticulously backed up, protected. "Don't you worry about a thing, Aunt Evelyn," he'd say, soothingly. "Focus on getting better." He had the passwords, the institutional access codes, my personal logins. Why wouldn't he? He was family, my protégé, my designated heir apparent, in the academic sense. I'd even given him power of attorney for healthcare decisions during the surgery. It seemed logical, efficient. Sylvia was there too, always smiling, bringing pre-cooked meals in neat containers, tidying up my already organized study, asking if she could help organize my office while I was laid up, my paper files, my correspondence. Things can get overwhelming, Evelyn, she'd say sweetly. Let me take this off your plate. Such helpfulness, such suffocating kindness. It felt like being wrapped in cotton wool, slowly, gently. The recovery was brutally slow, excruciatingly painful at times. There were medications, strong ones, opioids for the pain, others to manage side effects. They left me foggy, disoriented, confused sometimes, days blurred into a hazy continuum. Conversations became fuzzy around the edges, details slipped away. I remember feeling adrift, like watching my life through a murky lens, not quite myself. My sharp mind felt dulled, blunted. I found myself trusting Julian to handle the important things, Maury and more, believing his reassurances without question, too tired, too foggy to probe deeper. He'd sit by my bedside, his laptop always open, typing away, talking about needing to consolidate my digital files. It's for safety, Aunt Evelyn, he explained patiently. The university's updating its systems. We need to modernize your archive structure. He'd use terms like redundancy protocols, cloud migration, metadata standardization, things I understood in principle, concepts I'd worked with myself, but I lack the energy, the focus, the mental clarity to oversee it directly, to question his methods. He'd bring documents to sign, financial authorizations, permissions for university IT access related to my archives, research grant administration forms, just standard procedure, he'd murmur, spreading them out on the bedside table. The university needs this sorted while you're on leave, sometimes guiding my hand gently as I held the pen, my signature, shaky, uncertain, a pale imitation of its usual decisive stroke. I waved away the details. The fine print, too tired, too trusting. What possible reason did I have to doubt him? He was Julian, my sister's son, my chosen successor. He even mentioned Sylvia helping with the archiving project, cataloguing my physical notes, scanning decades of documents. She's incredibly meticulous, Aunt Evelyn, he'd said, smiling. A real perfectionist, treating your work with the reverence it deserves. Reverence, the word sticks in my throat now, like poison, like ash. Months crawled by, slowly, painstakingly. I started feeling stronger. The fog began to lift as the heavy pain medication tapered off. My mind felt clearer, sharper, more like itself, and with clarity came the returning, urgent pull of my work, my life's passion, that deep need to engage with the cosmos again. I asked Julian about a specific data set, observational data from the Keck telescopes, something crucial I needed for my longtime colleague, Dr. Ben Carter. We had an ongoing collaboration on galactic rotation curves, paused abruptly by my accident. Ben needed that specific file to proceed. Julian became evasive, uncharacteristically so. Oh, that file, Keck data. Yes, it's archived securely, Aunt Evelyn, absolutely safe. He fiddled with his tablet, avoiding eye contact. It might just take a little time to retrieve. The new system is complex, still indexing. Excuses, vague technical jargon, not like the precise, confident Julian I knew. Usually he was eager to demonstrate his competence, his mastery of the systems. A flicker, the first tiny, cold, almost imperceptible flicker of unease, a discordant note in the familiar melody of our interactions. I pushed, gently at first, not wanting to seem ungrateful or suspicious. Julian, I understand, but Ben really needs that data for our joint paper. The deadline is approaching. It's quite time-sensitive. Maury stalling, Maury talk of complex migration processes, corrupted index files, potential server latency. He promised to look into it immediately, to prioritize it, but his eyes, they didn't quite meet mine. There was a subtle shiftiness, a nervous energy I hadn't seen before. Then Ben Carter called. Dr. Carter, my colleague, my friend for over 30 years, he sounded excited initially. He'd just attended a postgraduate seminar at Cambridge, heard a truly brilliant presentation, by a promising young researcher, my nephew, Julian, on theoretical models of dark matter halos, models that sounded remarkably, stunningly, similar to our unpublished work. Ben was initially impressed, even proud. Thinking Julian was cleverly building on my foundational concepts, taking them in a new direction. But something felt off. Ben said Julian seemed surprisingly unsure during the intense Q&A session afterwards. He lacked the deep, intuitive understanding, the grasp of nuance, the intimate familiarity with the underlying mathematics that should underpin such original, groundbreaking work. He used specific phrases, technical terminology, concepts that Ben recognized immediately from my private drafts, my preliminary notes. Drafts Julian absolutely should not have seen in such exhaustive detail, let alone understood fully. Then Ben relayed one particular phrase, a unique conceptual label I'd coined myself for a specific anomaly in the data, a shorthand I used in my personal notes, one I hadn't shared widely, not even with Ben yet, one that was definitely, absolutely, contained within that specific Keck data set I'd asked Julian for, the one he couldn't retrieve. Silence on my end of the phone, a profound, echoing, crushing silence, the kind you feel in the moments just before implosion, before collapse. It wasn't just similar, it wasn't convergent evolution, it was mine. He was presenting my work, my unpublished, painstakingly developed theories, my intellectual property, as his own, boldly, shamelessly. And the Keck data set I needed, he couldn't provide it to me, because it likely didn't exist anymore, not in my archive. Perhaps he'd stolen the raw data too. Or perhaps he'd simply wiped the original after extracting what he needed, erasing the primary evidence of my work. The helpfulness, the concern, the data migration, the document signing, Sylvia's meticulous organizing, her reverence. It wasn't kindness, it wasn't care, it was systematic erasure, calculated theft, exploitation on an unimaginable scale, planned and executed while I was at my weakest. The blood drained from my face, my hands grew cold, colder than the vacuum of interstellar space. This wasn't just stealing money or property, this was stealing my life's meaning, my contribution to human knowledge, my very identity as a scientist, my reason for being, trying to wipe Dr. Evelyn Morrow, the astrophysicist, off the cosmic map, replacing my legacy, my 50 years of work, with his fraudulent imitation, his hollow echo. The fog, the medication-induced haze I'd been struggling through for months, vanished, instantly, evaporated, replaced by a clarity so sharp, so painful, it felt like shards of ice piercing my veins. My mind snapped into focus, cold, hard, analytical. Devastation hit first, a physical blow, a wave so powerful it threatened to drown me, to pull me under, decades of work, countless nights of observation, millions of lines of code, complex calculations, theoretical leaps made in quiet solitude, potentially gone, stolen, destroyed, forever. How much had he taken, how much had he destroyed beyond recovery? The sheer scale of the potential loss was staggering, terrifying. Then came the anger, not hot, not explosive. That wasn't my way, this was different, it was cold, deep, a singularity of rage forming in my core, compressing all the hurt, the betrayal, the profound violation, into something incredibly dense, hard, unstoppable, focused. He hadn't just stolen my work when I was vulnerable, he had meticulously planned to erase me, while pretending to care for me, exploiting my physical weakness, my trust, my affection, my love, even. It was parasitic, predatory. And Sylvia, the smiling, helpful Sylvia, clearly an accomplice, perhaps even a co-conspirator. Her wide-eyed fascination wasn't admiration, it was reconnaissance. Her helpfulness was interference, her organizing was sabotage. They thought I was finished, a frail old woman, recovering slowly, easily manipulated, easily discarded once my usefulness, my knowledge, had been fully extracted. They saw me as a stepping stone, a resource to be plundered. They underestimated me, profoundly. They forgot what I do for a living. I study the invisible. I find patterns in apparent chaos. I deduce reality from the faintest signals, from subtle perturbations in the fabric of spacetime, and I never, ever give up on the truth. The truth eventually comes out. It's a law of the universe, in a way. That phone call with Ben, that was the moment, the precise moment the grief turned glacial, the moment Dr. Evelyn Morrow, the trusting aunt, the dedicated mentor, died, vaporized, and something else, something colder, harder, more calculating, took her place, forged in betrayal, fueled by righteous fury. They wanted my legacy. They would learn the true meaning of consequences, written not just in academic journals, but in the unyielding laws of cause and effect. Actions have reactions, equal and opposite. My first instinct, pure raw impulse, call the university president, call the ethics committee, call the press, expose him immediately, burn him down. But I paused, took a deep, deliberate breath, that cold calculation taking hold, tamping down the immediate rage, analyzing the variables. What actual proof did I have? Right now, my word against his. He controlled my digital archives. He'd been managing my affairs, my recent financial records. He could easily claim I was confused, still suffering cognitive effects from the medication, delusional even, paranoid. He'd laid the groundwork perfectly. The concerned, sympathetic nephew caring for his increasingly frail, perhaps mentally declining aunt. It was insidious, cleverly constructed. No, a direct, immediate confrontation was foolish, premature, tactically unsound. It would give him time to cover his tracks further, destroy any remaining residual evidence, rally support from people unaware of the truth, paint me as vindictive, unstable, bitter. This required strategy, precision, patience, like plotting the trajectory of an interstellar probe, every move calculated, every variable considered, every potential countermove anticipated. I needed proof, irrefutable proof, undeniable evidence that would leave no room for doubt, and I needed to understand the full extent of the damage, the full scope of his theft and deception. So I feigned continued weakness, maintained the facade of the grateful, still slightly foggy, slowly recovering patient. It was the hardest acting role of my life. I thanked Julian effusively for his continued help, for managing everything so diligently, asked no more difficult questions about the archive, appeared passive, compliant, trusting. It was sickeningly difficult. Every false smile felt like a grimace. Every forced word of gratitude tasted like acid. But it was strategically necessary. Buy time, gather intelligence. My mind, however, was racing, working faster than ever, calculating, searching, planning. Where would proof lie? How could I recover what was lost? Or at least prove its original existence and my authorship? First, Ben Carter, my trusted colleague. I contacted him again, discreetly, using an old, heavily encrypted peer-to-peer channel we sometimes used for discussing highly sensitive pre-publication findings. Away from university servers, I laid out my suspicions, my chilling certainty, the details from his call, the missing data, Julian's evasiveness, my vulnerability. Ben was horrified, then utterly furious. His loyalty to me, to our shared work, was absolute, unshakable. He knew my work intimately, knew my intellectual signature, my unique approach to problems. He believed me instantly, without reservation, and he was ready to help, in any way possible, a colleague, a friend, a powerful, strategically placed ally within the academic system. We started brainstorming, late-night encrypted calls, exchanging secure messages. Where could copies, fragments, backups, drafts exist outside Julian's direct control? My mind sifted through decades of ingrained habits, old procedures, forgotten corners of my digital and physical life. Off-site institutional storage. Yes, years ago, before cloud storage was ubiquitous, I'd initiated a deep archive project, important papers, key observational data logs, early theoretical notebooks, transferred to physical copies and archival microfilm, sent to a secure, climate-controlled university facility, miles away. But had Julian known about that specific, older archive? Possibly. He was thorough. Had he accessed it? Forged my permission? Cloud backups. Julian claimed he'd migrated everything to a new, consolidated system he controlled. But had he been truly thorough? Were there old, independent backups he might have missed? Forgotten snapshots stored under different project codes from years ago, encrypted with keys he wouldn't possess, associated with grants that had long since closed. My old mentor, Professor Alastair Davies, retired now, living quietly in a cottage in the Scottish Highlands, a giant in the field, revered, unimpeachable. I had sent him extensive physical drafts, detailed calculations, years ago, of the very theories Julian was now claiming as his own, seeking his feedback, his critique. Would Alastair still have them? Could he verify their date, their origin? His word would carry immense weight. And then something clicked, a faint memory, resurfacing from the depths, from years back, a minor security incident at my home. Someone had tried jimmying the lock on my ground-floor home office window late one night. Nothing was taken. The police suspected opportunistic teenagers, but it spooked me, made me feel vulnerable in my own space. On the advice of a security consultant, I'd had small, very discreet, motion-activated cameras installed, high resolution, covering my office, the hallway outside, and the entrance to my study, feeding silently not to the cloud, not to my main network, but to a local, heavily encrypted hard drive hidden elsewhere in the house, tucked away in a dusty box in the attic storage room, physically disconnected from everything else, a standalone system. A detail I'd almost forgotten about, a detail Julian certainly wouldn't know. He hadn't been around when I installed it. Could those cameras, possibly, have captured him, in my office, at my primary research terminal, when he shouldn't have been there, accessing, deleting, copying files, tampering with my physical notes, handling documents? It was a long shot. The system was old. Had the hard drive filled up? Had it failed? Had it even been reliably recording? But it was a possibility, a potentially crucial one. The investigation began, in absolute secret, while I continued to play the part of the frail, grateful aunt, recovering slowly, oblivious. Ben Carter used his senior university credentials, carefully, subtly, like a surgeon probing delicate tissue, to investigate the digital archives from his end, looking for access logs, timestamp anomalies, traces of Julian's activity, evidence of large-scale deletions, or unusual download patterns targeting my specific research directories. He found inconsistencies, lots of them. Timestamps that didn't make sense for routine backups. Access logs showing Julian downloading massive amounts of data, terabytes, just days before claiming system migration issues, and corrupted files, red flags, digital breadcrumbs. Meanwhile, I focused on the physical, getting access to that hidden hard drive in the attic. This required careful maneuvering, waiting for a weekend when Julian and Sylvia were away visiting her parents, feigning a sudden nostalgic need for an old photo album stored in the same dusty closet space, my hands shaking as I climbed the attic ladder, not from weakness this time, but from pure adrenaline, fear of discovery, hope. I located the innocuous-looking box. Retrieved the drive, heart pounding, connecting it to a secure, air-gapped laptop Ben had arranged to be delivered discreetly. Holding my breath, waiting for the system check, the drive powered up, status light blinked green. It had been recording, intermittently, motion-activated, saving short clips whenever movement was detected, but it had recorded. Hours turned into days, spent scrolling through weeks then months of footage, mostly mundane clips, me working late at my desk, the weekly cleaning staff dusting, my cat napping in a sunbeam, and then, there he was, Julian, in my office, late at night, long after I was supposedly asleep upstairs, when he shouldn't have been there, hunched over my primary research terminal, typing furiously, eyes darting towards the door, connecting external hard drives. Copying vast directories. And then more damning footage, clip after clip, showing him systematically feeding pages, my handwritten notes, my calculation sheets, my notebooks, into a high-capacity shredder, a professional model, one I didn't own. He must have brought it in specifically for this purpose, methodical destruction, cold, emotionless, erasing my physical history, my thought process, my unique notations. And clear shots of Sylvia, helping him, packing boxes labelled University Archives scanned, boxes clearly filled with original documents, my correspondence, my early drafts, boxes likely destined for disposal. Not scanning, her complicity was undeniable, active, willing. The visual proof was sickening, devastating to watch, like witnessing a violation, but also intensely galvanizing. This was it, the smoking gun, the core of the irrefutable evidence, concrete, vivid, undeniable. Next, Professor Alastair Davies. In Scotland, I made the difficult call, explaining the unbelievable situation, the betrayal, the theft. He was initially shocked into silence, then profoundly outraged, disgusted, and yes, he still had the extensive drafts I had sent him years prior, carefully filed, dated upon receipt as was his meticulous habit, corroborating my timeline, my undisputed intellectual ownership. He immediately offered to provide sworn testimony, notarized copies, anything I needed. His support was unwavering, a pillar of strength. The off-site deep archive, Ben Carter, through discreet inquiries using channels firewalled from Julian's potential oversight, managed to confirm my fears. Julian had indeed accessed it, multiple times, using forged authorization documents, claiming it was part of the official university digital modernization initiative, but inventory logs showed discrepancies, specific boxes, containing irreplaceable early work, checked out, never returned, Maury fuel for the fire. Maury evidence of premeditated theft and destruction. We had it, the complete picture, the timeline, the motive, the method, and the proof, digital forensics, video evidence, witness testimony from unimpeachable sources, forged documents, archival discrepancies, a web of deceit, meticulously documented. Now the strategy, how to deploy this arsenal, not just to reclaim my work, my name, but to ensure Julian and Sylvia faced total, unequivocal, public accountability, consequences that match the enormity of their betrayal. A quiet legal battle, filing lawsuits, no, too slow, too private. It wouldn't undo the public damage if Julian had already started publishing or widely presenting my stolen work under his name. It wouldn't restore my reputation effectively within the scientific community, the only community that truly mattered in this context. A university investigation, necessary, eventually, but potentially bureaucratic, slow-moving, subject to internal politics, committees, delays. They might try to handle it quietly, to avoid scandal. I couldn't risk that. No, this required something more, dramatic, more public, more decisive, within the very arena they sought to conquer, the international scientific community, their peers, my peers. Ben and I, we devised a plan, bold, extremely risky, ruthless, perhaps, but proportionate, absolutely proportionate to the offence, a strategic counter-strike. Julian, riding high on his initial success presenting my work at smaller seminars, was scheduled to present his supposedly groundbreaking research as the prestigious keynote speaker at a major international astrophysics conference in Geneva, the largest gathering of the year. In 3 months, he'd been fast-tracked, accepted based on abstracts likely filled with my stolen data. My reputation, subtly leveraged behind the scenes, no doubt, to secure this coveted spot. He planned to make his big splash, announce his arrival as a major new voice on the back of my life's work. his coronation built on my destruction. That conference, that stage, that audience, that would be the venue for his public downfall, for his academic execution. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life, maintaining the facade of the oblivious recovering aunt, engaging Julian in seemingly innocent conversations about his upcoming keynote presentation in Geneva, offering feigned encouragement, suggesting he practice his delivery, while secretly, meticulously, preparing for battle. Ben helped compile the evidence into a clear, devastating presentation. Digital forensics experts authenticated the video footage beyond any doubt. Lawyers drafted sworn affidavits from me from Professor Davies. Professor Davies sent certified, dated copies of my early drafts via secure courier. We built an airtight case, layer upon layer of proof, ready to deploy at the critical moment. I focused intensely on my own recovery, pushing myself in physical therapy, regaining strength, stamina, not just to appear healthy and credible on stage, but to be *strong, for the confrontation, for the inevitable emotional and professional fallout. I also, very discreetly, began contacting a few, very senior, very respected, figures in the astrophysics world, people whose integrity was beyond question, people I trusted implicitly from decades of collaboration, sharing, carefully, cautiously, the outlines of the situation, under strict confidentiality, securing their potential support, their understanding, and ensuring their presence in Geneva as witnesses, as silent allies. The plan was brutally simple: let Julian give his entire presentation, let him bask in the spotlight he craved, let him lay claim to my theories, my data, my insights, in front of the world's leading astrophysicists, his future colleagues, my longtime peers. Then, during the Q&A session, when the anticipation was highest, I would step forward, not as a victim pleading for sympathy, but as the true originator, the rightful owner, and I would dismantle his claims, piece by excruciating piece, with cold logic and irrefutable evidence, in front of everyone, no escape, no denial possible. It felt strangely familiar, like preparing for a complex critical astronomical observation, setting the precise coordinates, calibrating the instruments meticulously, waiting patiently for the exact optimal moment to capture the faint light from a distant galaxy, or in this case, to expose the darkness hiding in plain sight. The day arrived. Geneva, the conference hall was buzzing, packed to the rafters, standing room only, anticipation was high, Julian was being lauded in the introduction, the brilliant young rising star, poised to reshape the field. I sat in the audience, midway back, anonymously, with Ben beside me. Professor Davies had flown in from Scotland as promised, sitting a few rows ahead. A few other key colleagues I had briefed, strategically positioned throughout the hall, invisible support, anchors in the storm I knew was about to break. Julian took the stage, arrogant, confident, smug, radiating self-satisfaction. He launched into his presentation, using my slides, slightly modified, my theoretical framework, simplified in places, sometimes crudely interpreted, lacking the deeper mathematical elegance, but unmistakably mine, delivered with flourishing gestures, feigned intellectual passion, a performance. Sylvia watched from the front row, beaming with pride, clutching her hands together, the picture of the devoted, supportive fiancé, playing her part to the end. Watching him speak my words, use my custom-designed diagrams, claim my hard-won insights, the cold rage intensified, burning like dry ice, but my expression remained, neutral, patient, waiting, observing, calculating the precise moment. He finished, to enthusiastic, sustained applause. The moderator stepped up, beaming, praising the groundbreaking work, then opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up across the auditorium, a few technical queries, clarifications on his models. Julian answered, adequately, but without true depth or originality. Just as Ben had observed months earlier, parroting understanding rather than demonstrating it. Then I stood up, slowly, deliberately, and began walking calmly, purposefully, towards the nearest aisle microphone. A murmur went through the hall. People recognized me. Dr. Evelyn Morrow, a surprise appearance, looking, recovered, healthy, focused, intense. Julian saw me approaching the microphone. His smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something, confusion, annoyance perhaps, not fear, not yet. He likely assumed I was there to lend support, to bask in his reflected glory. How wrong he was. I reached the microphone, adjusted it slightly, took a steadying breath, looked directly at him, across the crowded room, my voice, amplified, clear, steady, carrying to every corner of the silent hall. Dr. Morrow, the moderator said, acknowledging me with surprise. An unexpected pleasure to see you here and looking so well. Thank you, I replied curtly, my eyes still locked on Julian's, pinning him in place. I don't have a question, so much as a clarification, and perhaps a rather significant correction. The room fell utterly silent. Instantly, you could hear the ventilation system humming, the palpable shift in atmosphere. Every eye was on me, then on Julian. Julian, I began, keeping my tone level, devoid of obvious emotion, coolly academic, your presentation on asymmetrical dark matter distribution and its implications for galactic lensing echoes, quite remarkably, work I completed between 2015 and 2019, fundamental work detailed in numerous unpublished manuscripts, shared only with a very select few, and stored, exclusively, in my private research archive. Julian blanched visibly, his face lost its colour, his composure cracking under the weight of hundreds of stares. Aunt Evelyn, I was deeply inspired by your foundational concepts, of course, as any grateful student honours their mentor. He tried to recover, to spin it, to frame it as homage. Indeed, I continued, cutting him off smoothly, my voice sharp as obsidian. However, the specific mathematical proofs you presented just now, the unique variable sets derived from the Keck observatory data, even some of the specific idiosyncratic terminology you used, appear not just inspired by, but identical, to drafts I finalized in March 2019, drafts securely stored. I paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. Or what I mistakenly believed was securely stored. I saw Sylvia shift nervously in her front row seat, her eyes darting towards Julian, panic blooming on her face. Furthermore, I pressed on, relentlessly, methodically, these precise concepts, including the core equations you displayed on slide 27, were detailed extensively in correspondence and physical drafts sent to Professor Alastair Davies, who I see is present today, sent for his review. In 2018, I gestured towards Professor Davies, who nodded grimly, confirming my statement for all to see. Julian was sweating profusely now, stuttering, grasping for words. This is a profound misunderstanding. My work is entirely original. Perhaps it's a case of convergent evolution of ideas. It happens. He sounded desperate, unconvincing. Perhaps, I conceded, my voice turning colder, sharper, but convergence doesn't explain how vast portions of my personal digital research archive, containing precisely this unpublished work, were systematically accessed and then permanently deleted earlier this year, during a period when you, Julian, had exclusive administrative access, while ostensibly managing my affairs during my medical recovery. Gasps rippled through the stunned audience. People were leaning forward, whispering, realizing this was not a simple academic disagreement, but something far darker. Nor does convergence explain. I paused for maximum impact, letting the silence stretch. This. Ben Carter, on cue from my subtle nod, dimmed the main house lights slightly and activated a secondary projector feed, displaying crystal clear video footage, on the large screen directly behind the paralyzed Julian. Footage from my hidden office camera, time-stamped, undeniable, showing Julian at my research terminal, dragging entire directories to the trash icon, confirming deletion, showing him feeding stacks of my handwritten notes, my precious notebooks, into the whirring blades of the shredder, night after night, and showing Sylvia, clearly assisting him, packing the boxes labelled University Archives scanned, boxes filled with original materials, her fingerprints all over the crime. The silence now was absolute, heavy, suffocating, shock, disbelief, outrage, horror, reflected on the faces of the audience, colleagues, mentors, potential collaborators, staring at the undeniable proof of betrayal. Julian stared at the screen, his face a mask of pure terror, caught, utterly exposed, humiliated before the entire world he sought to impress. Sylvia looked like she was about to physically collapse, her face buried in her hands. And it certainly doesn't explain, I continued, my voice resonating with controlled glacial fury, the discovery of forged authorization documents, bearing a poor imitation of my signature, granting you access to secure university archives, and the off-site deep storage facility, resulting in the unauthorized removal, and likely destruction, of irreplaceable physical records documenting decades of my research. Ben switched the projection feed, displaying scanned copies of the forged documents, my real signature alongside the clumsy forgery, highlighted, access logs from the archives, inventory discrepancy reports, evidence, cold, hard, fact. This wasn't building on foundations, I stated clearly, my voice like ice chipping away at his shattered credibility. This wasn't honoring a mentor, this was calculated theft, deliberate sabotage, academic fraud of the highest order, an attempt to erase my contribution to science, and fraudulently claim it entirely as your own. I looked around the room, at my colleagues, my peers, the assembled community, the evidence, which will be provided in full to the University Ethics Board and the relevant authorities, is comprehensive, meticulously documented, and irrefutable. It includes forensic analysis of university servers, sworn affidavits from myself and Professor Davies, authenticated archival records, and this incontrovertible visual proof. I turned back to Julian, who looked utterly broken, a hollow shell, trapped in the harsh glare of the spotlight he had so desperately craved. Your academic career, Julian, built on lies, manipulation, and theft, ends today, here, now. I switched off the microphone, turned my back on him, and walked slowly, deliberately, back to my seat, Ben Carter standing beside me, a silent statement of support. The silence in the hall held for one moment longer, a collective intake of breath, then chaos erupted, shouting, angry questions directed at the stage, demands for answers, university officials rushing towards the podium, conference security moving swiftly towards a stunned, immobile Julian, and a sobbing, hysterical Sylvia. The fallout was immediate, nuclear, and brutal. Julian and Sylvia were detained by conference security, then questioned by Swiss authorities who were called to the venue, pending a full investigation initiated by the university and legal counsel I had already engaged. Their university affiliations, doctoral candidacy for Julian, postdoctoral position for Sylvia, revoked instantly. That very day, their academic careers not just stalled, but completely annihilated, obliterated. Any previous publications they had co-authored, immediately retracted under suspicion. Their names became instantly synonymous with disgrace, fraud, unethical conduct of the highest, most shocking order. A cautionary tale whispered in university corridors worldwide. News spread like wildfire through the global scientific community, leaked to the academic press, then the mainstream media, the dramatic story of the brilliant elder scientist, betrayed by her own nephew and his fiancée, who then executed a devastatingly precise public takedown at the world's premier astrophysics conference. It captured imaginations. There were, of course, legal proceedings, formal charges of intellectual property theft, wire fraud related to grant administration, elder financial abuse, forgery, destruction of property. The evidence compiled by Ben and my legal team was overwhelming, airtight. Faced with the mountain of proof, including the video recordings, they eventually pled guilty to multiple charges. Hoping for some measure of leniency, they received appropriate custodial sentences, justice. In the cold, formal sense of the legal system, was served. But the true punishment, the one that mattered most perhaps, was the utter, permanent destruction of their ambitions, their reputations, the public humiliation witnessed by their entire world, the permanent, irrevocable exile from the scientific community they desperately, ruthlessly wanted to conquer. They tried to steal my legacy. In doing so, they forfeited their entire future, a fitting, almost mathematically symmetrical, consequence, an equation balanced. My own reputation was fully restored, vindicated, enhanced, even the recovered work, painstakingly reconstructed from Professor Davies' drafts, salvaged digital fragments Ben uncovered, and my own memory, finally published under my name alone, was hailed by my peers as truly groundbreaking. Significant, my resilience, my strategic mind in the face of such adversity, unexpectedly lauded. Colleagues expressed not pity but respect. A different kind of recognition, hard ones. Life afterwards is different, certainly quieter, more cautious, definitely more solitary in some ways. The trust, once so profoundly shattered, cannot be fully rebuilt, not in the same open, naive way. It leaves scars, invisible perhaps, but there. But there is peace, a measure of hard-won peace, and a profound, deep, quiet satisfaction, knowing I fought back, knowing I won. I reclaimed my work, my identity, my legacy, not just for myself, though that was paramount, but for the principle of the thing, for the integrity of scientific pursuit, for the truth, which, like the distant stars I study, endures, even when temporarily obscured by darkness, by clouds of dust and gas, or human malice. They thought my age, my illness, my temporary frailty made me weak, invisible, disposable, an obstacle to be removed. They forgot that wisdom, hardened experience, and a lifetime dedicated to rigorous analytical thought are formidable weapons, especially when fueled by righteous, calculated, inescapable fury. I look up at the night sky now, through my telescope, or just standing on my porch, and I see the order, the immutable laws, the vast, silent, beautiful complexity, and I know I navigated my own patch of terrestrial chaos, my own black hole of betrayal, and I prevailed. I found my way back to the light. Wow, just wow, right, take a breath. That's Evelyn's story, in her own voice, as she recounted it to me, the precision in her telling, the controlled burn of that cold anger, the sheer strategic brilliance, the ruthlessness of her comeback. It still gives me chills every time I think about it. The methodical way she gathered evidence, the patience, the final, devastating execution. Imagine the sheer strength of will it took to maintain that facade of vulnerability for months, to plot every move like a chess grandmaster, to wait for the perfect moment, and then to execute that plan with such devastating accuracy, in front of the entire world that mattered most to her, crucially to them. It's such a stark reminder, isn't it? Never underestimate someone based on their age, their gender, or their perceived physical frailty, especially someone with a mind like Evelyn's, a mind honed by decades of exploring the cosmos, was more than capable of navigating the darkness of human betrayal and delivering, well, cosmic justice. Was it justice, pure and simple, or was it revenge, cold, hard, meticulously planned revenge, and perhaps more importantly, does it even matter what we call it, when the betrayal was so profound, so personal, so cynically calculated, when they tried to erase her very existence? What do you think? Where is the line between justice and revenge in a case like this? Was Evelyn's public dismantling justified, necessary, or too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear what you think about Evelyn's actions, her choices, and if you've ever encountered or heard of anything remotely like this level of betrayal and strategic comeback. This story is a powerful, unforgettable testament to resilience, to the unexpected fire that can be forged in the face of unimaginable violation and exploitation. It's exactly why I share these stories here, to give voice to those who fought back, often against incredible odds, against opponents who held all the cards, or so they thought. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that chill run down your spine, that sense of fierce, maybe even uncomfortable satisfaction at the end, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and definitely hit that notification bell. We share stories like Evelyn's regularly, stories of survival, defiance, and justice, often the kind of complex, morally grey justice you won't hear about anywhere else. Share this video too, if you know someone who might need to hear a story about standing up after being knocked down, or someone who simply appreciates a narrative where the tables are turned, decisively, dramatically, unforgettably. Thank you for listening, really listening, to Evelyn's journey, her ordeal, her triumph. It's important. These stories matter. They remind us of the complexities of human nature, both the darkness and the surprising strength. I'm Victoria, and I'll be back soon with another unforgettable story. You can count on that. Until then, stay aware, stay strong, and never, ever count anyone out. You just never know the steel hidden beneath the surface.